How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Please Be Random. My name is Austin, as you know, and this is going to be my first guest today, Jason Matthews. He is the author of The
The
Leading
leading man.
Man. The
The
Leading
leading
Man.
man.
Wow, I wanted to say Learning Man, which is kind of what we're wanting to do today, so that's okay. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Jason.
Thank you. Yeah. As Austin said, my name is Jason Matthews. I wrote a book called The Leading Man. I've been a coach for probably the past 12 years, really focused a lot on leadership and business. For the past maybe 3 years, I've really been focusing on men and helping them become better leaders and really helping them identify what leadership really is, which is what the focus of the leading man is all about, is how men can optimize themselves as leaders and how they can grow into become the natural leaders that they are meant to be. In the book, I talk about how leadership is really the birthright of men, and it comes with certain responsibilities. And when exercised correctly, it really optimizes not only them, but also creates opportunities for amazing connections with other men as well as with women, both in relationships, business, and in social settings.
Fantastic. Well, let's be honest, there is a war on masculinity these days.
Very true.
Feminism has swamped the country, but not that. And I've always said I don't have a problem with feminism. If they want more responsibilities, then fine. But I also feel like there should be a line that they know that like there is no crossing, because it's just at some point the woman runs out of, whether it be strength or, you know, um, I mean, I've seen plenty of women that are pretty dang good leaders, if you want me to be honest with you. But I get where you're coming from. The naturally born instinct of a man is to lead and protect and provide. I mean, that's what we've all been taught from, well, if you were taught the right things at the right ages, you've been taught you get or you create a family and you protect, provide, and supply for that family. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, and it's really important. One thing that I stress in my book is what is leadership for men? Because as you said, women can lead. Women are very capable at leading. But when done correctly, women lead in a very specific way, just as men lead in a very specific way. And for men, I call this expressive leadership. And this is what most people understand traditional leadership to be. It's expressive. It is outwardly shown. It is something that is done to blaze a trail. In the leading man, I actually give a definition for leadership, which is the ability to negotiate and resolve conflict in order to achieve a shared goal. And so it's very broad, but it's meant to be.
Okay.
Because when you think about men who do anything that either protect, provide, they build, they create, they're always doing something that reaches a shared goal. But in order to do that, they have to understand how to resolve the conflicts that are going to come about, either from their teams, from their families, or from other people that they encounter. So the ability to overcome adversity through knowing how to deal with conflict is extremely important for leaders. It is probably the most important task for someone who acts as an expressive leader.
Absolutely. And to make a point just on some of the things you said, like you said build, and the first thing that came to my mind is the a lot of these feminists and women, period, they don't realize that a man probably created 90 to 95% of the clothes that you wear. And I know for a fact the makeup industry started with a man. He created that industry. So all these women that are all dolled up going to these shows and getting up on stage and talking about how feminism is righteous and we should have more of this and more women in power and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but uh, men created all of this, and that stems from what you're talking about. I think it's a trait that's been embedded in us since probably the beginning of time.
You say 90 to 95%, and I would say that you're actually a little low. It's closer to 98 to 100%.
Hell yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because, yes, there have been women who have utilized the structures that are already there, but they haven't created the structures.
Mm.
They haven't created the actual industries. If you go back to any industries that has been created, it's all 100% of the world that we live in some fashion, has been created by men.
Well, if you ask a feminist, the reason that is because the narrative and the way society ran back then, women didn't have rights, they couldn't vote, they, I mean, all that. So there was no woman option when all
Well,
of this
let's
was, you know.
yeah, let's talk about the idea of rights for a second,
Okay.
because this is, again, this is something that is not very well discussed. It's an emotional issue because it's very vague.
Hmm.
And so when you talk about the rights, what rights according to whom? And
Well,
so
I mean,
here,
the only thing that it comes off, I mean, the first thing I should say, it's probably not the only thing I could think of, but the first thing that comes off the top of my head is voting, which, I mean, in this country, supposedly, the way things work is if you vote on some, I mean, if you have a vote, then you can get, if you have enough people to vote for a certain amount of thing, they get what they want. So, women didn't have that voting right back in the day. So they
right.
see it as they didn't have even a chance to speak what they wanted back then, So I don't know. They come up with arguments, and some of them, it almost in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that might have been a decent point, and then you're like, but because
Right.
all these men that created everything went home to their wives, and you don't think that their wives spoke to them? I mean,
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
yeah, I mean
Absolutely.
they did, and they put in their input, but I mean it was also different back then too. Like if they didn't have dinner ready, they got smacked around. So I mean, it was.
Well, not really. I mean, that's the narrative that women want to push. That women have been seen as property, and in some cultures, yes, this is true. A lot of beliefs, especially in Islam and maybe in some other beliefs, they do believe that there is a certain place for women, but that's not to say that women are considered subservient. If you think about it early, if you go early enough, you can see that everyone suffered, that there was a time when neither men nor women had the right to vote or had the right to voice anything.
Yep.
And Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, where he talks about that if you go back early enough, you can see that everyone suffered collectively, and the suffering was just a little bit different.
Yeah, and I mean that trails off into subjects about race and the equality of those things and all of
Sure,
that too.
sure.
Because I mean the thing is you can't say at all that you are the only, whether it be sex or race or whatever, you're not the only people that have suffered it through history. I mean, the Irish are not the Irish. Yeah,
Yeah, the
the
Irish as
Irish.
well.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they was like slaves for a long time. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you can't tell, I got a little red in my face. So I mean, and my ancestry's been in that too. So what do I get a what do they call that now? That check that they're talking about wanting discrimination check or whatever from. Oh, what's that check called? I can't remember the name of it, but we're getting off track. Anyway, um, yeah, for sure. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. The narrative has been pushed the wrong way, and that's the problem. Is if you have a clickbaity title, that's what gets pushed on the media, and that
Yes.
works for news channels, that works for Facebook posts, that works for YouTube channels. It doesn't matter where you're at, what platform you're on. If it reads sexy at the beginning, then you're 9 times out of 10 going to get more views, and then that grows, and then people, they only hear one side of it, or they hear something that they liked from one side, and then they just completely ignore the other side because they don't want to listen after that.
And this is an important distinction, because when getting back to my topic, when you think about what women are lacking, it's always seen from what they are not getting based on the men's perspective.
Yeah.
So they are using a benchmark for men and then saying, women, you have to meet this benchmark, which is entirely unfair, because you are having someone who operates in a very different way than men say you have to act like this. Already you're setting them up. You're setting them up for failure. You are dishonoring them by giving them a requirement they were never really equipped to meet,
Hmm.
and then saying this is your standard, and then pushing it, and pushing it until they adopt it as their own, thus betraying themselves.
Yep. Yep. Well, and this is probably something you could, I mean, elaborate on with me. I saw something the other day. It was on a video, and it said women don't choose. I mean, women have, standards and things like that when they're choosing a male partner, and the issue is coming into it, their standards are not that great. But if they decide to keep it long term, then it turns into this cat and mouse game of let's see how much I can mold him into this Prince Charming that I want, instead of what I hate about that theory is they don't they don't pay any attention to the good that comes from the man already, and then they want to morph him into what he's not ever going to be. Because let's be honest, these women now, they want housewives for men, and that's not what we are. That's not what we're made to get on skyscrapers and to dig ditches, and then that puts food on the table, and then
Yep.
that's not what we're made to be. We're not made to come home and then vacuum and clean the house and do the dishes. Now, I'm not saying we can't help with that, take a little load off, but then that falls into the providing aspect, in my opinion. If she comes to you and says, I am struggling. I mean, the kids have been driving me nuts. The house is trashed, and I've got too much on my plate. And we step up, and we're like, well, let me do this. I can do this. Let me go. And that's that providing instinct. We always and forever will want to provide and make the woman happy. And I see where you're coming from, because then they play off that, and then they try to turn it into, well, but I'm so tired, or I'm so overstimulated, or and then they use that as, even if they're being sincere, you would have no idea because they use it all the time.
Well, even if they do, even if they were, I mean, yes, you're tired, you're overstimulated, but so is your husband. He's tired, he's overstimulated, he's exhausted, he's had a day, and yet he's still expected to keep on going because it's what he does.
Hmm.
And if there's a job to do, it's going to get done. Regardless of how long it takes, it is going to get done.
That right there is the problem. They expect it to be on their time frame, and just sometimes that's not how that works, and they don't understand that.
That's not how any of this works. It's never
Yeah.
about the timeline. It's always about the. And this is one thing that I've stressed with so many of my so many of my male clients is when you have a relationship, you are co-creating your reality together. What you are doing is you are finding out how to work together. The man's responsibility is to overcome the conflict in order to reach a shared goal.
Yes.
And women have their part to play and how they lead in their specific way, which is called receptive leadership. And this is something that I'm actually going to be talking about in my upcoming book, The Nurturing Woman. And because I
Hmm.
show both these sides, because it's going to be it's meant to be a much larger landscape than just about talking about man versus woman, but really talking about how humanity survives and how they thrive.
Hmm. Yeah, because let's be honest. I mean, so I that you said that, and it popped this into my head, like the Roman Empire. They ruled Europe and that whole continent for the longest time because their army was insane. And then when they started to introduce like what we've got going on now with the LGBTQ stuff, and it wasn't that back then, but they started to become feminine men, and then they didn't have soldiers, and then they lost, and they lost their reign. And I think they were the longest running until, is it us now? I think the U.S. is now the longest running, like.
No, 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 no. Because the Roman Empire was from I think it was from 300 BC to almost 200 AD. It was
they
500. It was over 500 years.
they ruled all that whole time.
Yes, they
Oh,
did.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
I could have swore we were coming up on it. I think heard that some at one point. But my point with that is like now, the society that we live in is creating such feminine men, which is what you talk about. We've lost our masculinity. I mean, that's, and the scary part about that is they're allowing those type of people into services that protect our country. And then but then they won't allow me because I have this. You know what I'm saying? Like, my hand tattoo should not affect the fact that I can put a uniform on, go over there, and do what I need to do. But it stopped me from being able to go into the military, right? So a hand tattoo stops me, but wanting to be a girl but you're really a guy doesn't. And that's all that inclusive society that we have now. You gotta include them, or something, they're gonna get a lawsuit or discrimination factors or whatever.
So one thing that I stress at the very beginning of my book is why men have really lost their ability to become men. And while feminism is a part of it, a larger part has to do with the difference between what a masculine archetype is and what a wounded archetype is. So the masculine archetypes, I draw a lot from Carl Jung in this regard. So he developed something called the cardinal orientation. Kind of think of it like a compass, north, south, east, and west. But instead, his was freedom, ego, order, and social. And so I took that and I said, okay, so how can this actually be explained in a way that it explained well, so that it is structured? Because one thing that Jung didn't do was structure things very well.
Hmm.
After he created that, he kind of went off the deep end with like symbolism and storytelling for his clients for therapeutic sake, but didn't actually do much for creating structure. And me, I'm all about structure. So what I did was I created the understanding of masculine archetypes. So for freedom, I created the explorer. For ego was the ruler. For order was the champion. And for social was the guardian. And all of these have very distinct capabilities, but they also have a wounded side to them. The wound is where where masculinity is not able to be effectively or healthily expressed. And this is what I believe true toxic masculinity is: the
Hmm.
inability to um, celebrate one's own masculine nature and deny it from a man.
Mm.
So a wounded explorer is a lone wolf. A wounded ruler is a tyrant. A wounded champion is a white knight. And a wounded guardian is a nice guy. And even as I say these terms, men will like, oh yeah, yeah, I know what
Hmm.
you're talking about.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. So you can tell that the lone wolf is someone who escapes connection in order to be alone because it's how they survive. They
Hmm.
can't trust being able to be with anyone else. The tyrant is a control freak. The white knight is someone who is going to overgive because they believe that's how that they assert their value, sacrificing of themselves in the process. And the nice guy just hates conflict. In every single one of these cases, they are all denying themselves their masculine nature and they are betraying themselves as leaders.
So I'm putting myself in the guardian category because if an argument breaks out, I try my best to defend myself until I get to the point where I can tell that it doesn't matter anymore, and then it's like a sad puppy. I just put my tail between my legs, sit wherever I'm sitting, and ignore it. So, what would you say if I asked you this? What would you say is the number one thing that kills marriages between a truly a man that's truly trying to be masculine as possible and provide and do all the things that is necessary of a man, and then a woman that is trying to almost achieve the same thing in a way, like a balance of masculine. I'm gonna use the balance of masculinity, but that's not, you know what I'm saying. It's like a balance of power. That's a better word to use. And so, in that situation, what do you think destroys that marriage the fastest? The
So are you
woman,
talking about a marriage where the man is naturally masculine and the woman is naturally feminine?
the woman is, I would say, let's put it in terms like this: naturally independent and doesn't know how to be like as one. Like because a naturally in my mind, a naturally masculine man is looking for his mate for life, and that's the goal. I want to find my mate, bond together, and create one family. But you have a lot of women nowadays, and you can't tell me that they don't exist. But I mean, like you just said, there's lone wolves of men too, and I'm by no means I'm saying we're innocent, because none of us are, okay? But there are a lot of women out there now that like independency is massive in their life, okay? And I feel like that creates a lot of this when you're in a relationship with a man that wants to lead and pushes to lead. So I feel like if
You just answered your own question
I kind of
because
did. That's what I
yeah,
thought.
the number one killer of relationships is competition.
Mm.
It's the desire to compete for one role,
Mm-hmm.
especially when one person is naturally designed for that role, and another person tries to usurp that person's position because they believe they deserve it more.
So the woman is overly righteous, and then the man gets battered to basically a shell because his masculinity's been sucked dry from the woman that is doing the vacuuming of his masculinity.
Yes, because she doesn't fight fair, because she knows how to use emotional warfare.
Like I was talking about earlier,
Right.
I'm
So now
stressed
you
out. I need your help.
right. So now you've got a woman who's basically running a psyop on her husband, making him believe that he is not capable, and thus trying to take the power from him. This it breeds the number one thing that kills all marriages, which is contempt. Contempt is the biggest killer of all relationships because it undermines the respect that men and women naturally develop through the creation of a relationship and a bond.
Yeah, so when I hear the term open-minded, that's what I think needs to be applied to all natural heterosexual relationships.
That is the only way they succeed is if they are willing to communicate and they're willing to define what the relationship looks like. This is why I said they co-create their reality.
Mm-hmm.
They create the agreement moving forward, or at least they should, of what their relationship looks like. It's going to be different for every person. It's not going to
Absolutely.
be one size fits all, which is why agreement is so important. But once that agreement is had, you better do your part,
Mm-hmm.
both men and women.
Yeah, that's what
Because the moment you decide to break that agreement, the moment that you said, no, this doesn't work for me, and you work counter that agreement, you have just destroyed the sanctity of that relationship. You have
Mm-hmm.
betrayed the number one thing that relationships require to work, which is trust.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because if we sit down and have built our ball of our relationship and you start pulling strings out of that, I mean, the first of all, I mean, if you think of it in layman's terms of building a building, okay? I build a house with you, and this terminology is the relationship. You start tearing studs out of the wall, and that's a supporting wall.
It's going to fall down.
That house crumbles. I mean, to put it in terms that, maybe some people don't, and maybe we're talking to a younger crowd. I haven't figured out who watches my videos yet, but, that's the thing is I don't, I I wish there was a way, and I know there is. You can go around and do rallies. Wow, did you just hear that almost come out of my mouth? You can go around and do, you can go around and do shows and things like that, and speak to like high schoolers that are coming right out of, like graduates and things like that, and you could talk to them about these things because what I'm picking up from your book is it's not just focusing on what men need to focus on. It also stems to what they need to watch out for when it comes to like the woman of the relationship. They need to understand that, like a woman could actually read this book of yours from what I'm gathering and learn possibly what she's doing wrong. So it's not like it's just an attack on one or the other.
In a roundabout certain way, in a roundabout sort of way, the idea of the book was to help men understand what it is that is causing them to not serve themselves and then step up to be the leaders they need to be. So, understanding what causes the wounded archetype, I call it shade, which is basically 5 negative behaviors: secretive, hollow, antagonistic, divisive, and evasive.
Mm.
So, secretive is just the withholding of information. Hollow is the superficial relationships without any depth or without any kind of real trust. Antagonistic, that's creating contention. Divisive, me versus you. And then evasive is lacking responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the 5 things that if you look at any behavior that destroys relationships or causes contention, I guarantee it moves into one of these 5 categories. So then the idea is, okay, so if these are the 5 behaviors that destroy masculinity, destroy relationships, and destroy success, what creates it? Again, 5 behaviors. I call it TRACE, which is transparency, relatability, assertiveness, compassion, and empowerment. And these are the 5 behaviors that will do the most to help a person move from a wounded state to a healthy masculine leadership state. But you need to be able to work these like muscles. Trace behaviors are like a muscle. They have to be worked. So there are 4 exercises that I take people through, which I call the core skills. And these core skills are self-awareness, emotional intelligence, healthy boundaries, and stoic resilience. And through the development of these 4 skills, you can develop the trace behaviors that are necessary in order to not only deal with yourself well, but after that, deal with other people well. Most people don't understand that 90% of successful interactions has to do with self-mastery. Once you get that part down, then your interactions with others become much more positive. They become much more capable and much more likely to succeed.
Hmm. Well, you've got it laid out pretty good there. That's so so if you had to start coaching a new person tomorrow, what is the first thing you're doing? Like, okay, so what's the first question you would bring out to learn the most about that person?
Well, the first thing I want to know is what kind of archetype they are. Where do they fall into? What is their core need? Um, Personality archetypes. I talked about the 4 masculine archetypes, but they kind of overlap a little bit, and this creates the personality archetype. You've got a primary, which is the core need, the thing that a person must fulfill within themselves in order to feel satisfied, in order to feel self-worth. And then you've got the motivator. This is what causes people to want to connect with others, the thing that makes them want to reach out. So, what is their core need? What is their motivator? Once I understand that, I pretty much know what a person is all about. Now I can find out how it is they are not showing up for themselves and others, especially if I know what their core need is, because this is where the wound develops.
Hmm.
So once I understand that, then I can understand what they need to know or what they need to develop in order to create that masculine sense for them as well as for others. And oftentimes it happens so gradually that people don't really notice that they're doing anything different until they realize that people are looking at them very differently.
Hmm.
That people are interacting with them saying, there's something different about you. Where you can go back to your you can go back to even where you live. And
Hmm.
I know this from personal experience, where the people, you know how when you live in a certain place, they see you a certain way, but once you've done some radical work and you go back, there's something different about you. I can't
Hmm.
place it, but you've really grown. It has nothing to do with your age. It has everything to do with the way that they associate to who you are to who you were. There's a disconnect, so they have to look at you differently.
Yep.
And so that's one of the greatest evidences that someone has done the work, that they can go anywhere. And someone says, I don't know what it is, but there's something about you that really makes me want to respect you.
Hmm. Yep. Well, uh, me, for example, I work in a workplace where I deal with a lot of the public, and it's not necessarily a workplace where you deal with public that wants to be dealing with you. I install breathalyzers in vehicles. That
Okay.
is my job. Okay, so like anybody that comes in there is not happy about talking to me in the first place. So starts off on the wrong foot to begin with. Okay, but I have some clients that have come in there to me, and then I say I'm on vacation. They go to a different shop, or they talk to somebody else, and they come back the next time they come in, and they look right at me. I mean, they look me in the eyes, and they go, "The first day I met you, I knew I was going to like you. I went over there to that other shop, and I knew immediately I was going to hate that guy." And I've never understood what that is about me, but I mean, it's kind of like you and I are doing. I mean, we did a little Q&A right before we started this, and I mean, we just hopped right into it like we've known each other 15 years. You know what I mean? Something about me that you can talk to me. I don't know why I hung out with a little bit of younger kids when I had younger siblings, and they all looked up at me as like I was the dad of the group. They always came to me and they talked to me about their problems and all that other stuff, which I know some of that was, I had seasoning on me that they didn't have, but it wasn't just them. It was my friend group. It was heck, even some of my parents' friends just knew that they could talk to me. So I don't know why or what instills that in people that meet me, but it's something about it.
Got one question for you. Um, when you think about how you deal with things, do you think about how it's going to be sentimental or how it's going to create a foundation?
Well, so give me an example to
So,
kind of jumpstart my
right.
brain.
So when I say sentimental, I mean, is it going? do you think about how it's going to affect others, or do you think about how it's going to help you create something that you can build from?
Okay, so let's use an example of, let's say, a friendship. I almost want to say it's a little bit of both because I want to build that healthy relationship, but I also care about how they want to build it. So it's like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what do you need? But then also, like, at the same time, it's in the front of my mind, I need to do this for me to be able to enjoy that. You know what I mean? So, like, I guess it's
Right.
kind of a little bit of both.
So yeah, I would say that your primary architect probably is a guardian, but your secondary is most likely a ruler. And so that tells me that you're someone who wants to protect something that already exists, which is very guardian fashion. They look to preserve, they look to sustain. But at the same time, when you are interacting with others, it is there to build something definable. There's something that you want to have there where both people know that there's a role, that there's a reason why this is happening. You don't do things for no reason.
hmm
And so it makes you, it's the ruler aspect that I find that people often gravitate towards. I have identified myself as what's known as a visionary commander. A visionary commander is someone who has a ruler primary, a ruler core need, with an explorer motivator. I love to see how things are going to work. I love building things, breaking them, and then building them again
hmm
in order to find out what makes it work, so I can do it better.
Well, and see, I have a little bit of touch of that too, because I mean, say for this podcast, for example, you can ask my fiance. I annoyed her on multiple nights, laying there watching videos on how podcasting works. I want to know the nitty gritty and how to get everything off the floor and try to get it going. So anytime I ever want to do anything, I research it, and I mean to the fullest extent of YouTube or Google or whatever I need to do to research that thing. So I have a little taste of that too. So
And that's
I,
very ruler. That's very rulership, because it's the wanting to make sure that you do it right, or the wanting
hmm
to make sure that when you do it, it's going to last. That it's not going to be something that just kind of crumbles.
hmm
That speaks to a very healthy foundation.
Well, that's good.
So what I'm when I talk about the explorer piece, I want to push the boundaries. I want to see what else there is. What can I do with it? How can I f with it?
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
how can I see what else to do with it? I've my background is in psychology. I got my degree in 2009, and I never went for my master's, but I kept on my own education because I wanted to find out what else there was available. So I researched trauma, I researched behavior, I went through behavior analysis training, I did all kinds of things like NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, anything that I can do to understand the human mind, because I want to know how to be the best at social engineering in an ethical way,
hmm
which I know is going to be the best way for me to interact with other people.
Well, and you don't seem like the type. So when I hear psychiatrist, is that what you said? Psychology?
Psychologist.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Okay. When I hear those terms, like my first thing that pops in my head is a therapist, first of all, and therapy has always upset me, and I think it's because I relate therapists to $300 an hour, and then they tell you need pills. That's so and realistically, I would say that's probably anywhere between. I mean, in my mind, 70 to 80% of these people out there that they want to talk to you for 2 months and then say, well, you're depressed. Here's some Zoloft, or you got some serious ADHD. Here's some medication for that. Adderall, whatever. And I don't want a pill pusher when I want to let my stuff out. I want to fully let it out, and then I expect some kind of explanation as to fix it myself, not depend on the medication to do it for me. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to. I want to know. When I need to know what I need to do to fix it, and then let me do it. Coach me through that. Let me get to the point where I need to fix myself on my own.
And that's why I never went through the to finish my advanced degree, because that was not the kind of work that I wanted to do. I did not want to be a pill pusher. I did not want to be the person who just focused on the notepad. So how did that make you feel? I
hmm
want to really I wanted to make sure that I was dealing with people and that the people that I was dealing with felt like I had them. Like when I say I got you, they know that I got you,
Mm-hmm.
and that was going to be the end of it. That when I am seeing a person, I am attending to their emotional needs, and by doing that, they feel like they're actually being seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, because that's my thing. If I go in to talk to a therapist and I'm paying you $250, $300 an hour to sit there and talk to me, number one, that's a waste of money because you could go home and talk to your mom and she knows you just as well. She knows you way more than this person ever will, and you're paying them to get to know you, so that is pointless. But when I'm in a therapy session and all I see is you staring at a piece of paper, you could care less about me. You're more worried about me paying on the way out the door.
Yeah, you're basically filling time instead of treating the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to treat the issue. I want to find out what it is that is making Austin not be able to either communicate effectively, to reach the goals that he believes he needs to set for himself, or why he has created something that is absolutely unrealistic and believe that it was something he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to find these things out. And that's part of that is part of the allure that psychology gave me is the desire of wanting to really figure people out.
Mm-hmm.
I've been obsessed with human behavior since I was 8 years old. Since I was an awkward kid who just could not interact with anybody, who was goofy and just stood out like a frickin' sore thumb and had no friends. And I was like, well, how do I change that? So I just began copying people. I began mimicking behavior. And it started working until people wanted to create something deeper. I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So I basically had to teach myself how to be a socialized human being.
Yep. Yep. You had to figure out basically how to be yourself without mimicking the other person's. Yeah. Yeah. You had to be your own person. I mean, and that sounds cliche, but that's exactly what it is.
In order to do that, I had to understand what it meant to be human, what it meant to, because I've always been a very smart individual. I haven't always had the best wherewithal, but I've always been very technically smart. So being able to figure things out has always been a joy.
Mm-hmm.
Once I was able to start to really figure out why people do what they do, and shout out to Chase Hughes, one of the best human behavior analysts around. When I started really applying his stuff and really understanding the why, really understanding the reasons that exist why people do what they do, that's when real empathy started to emerge. When I could actually relate to other people, because I had a desire to just be curious about why they were doing what they were doing, and they felt like I was connecting with them. But really, I was just like, oh man, I'm so curious. Why do you do that? And but they were like, man, this guy really gets me. No, I don't, but I want to, and that's the whole point. I really want to get to know you, and so it created this idea like, man, this guy's really cool. I'm like, I have no idea what the f I'm doing, but it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always kind of been that curiosity type too. Like, so this is a little less laughable, I guess, but my uncle he's been in and out of prison since he was like 18. I mean, he's just ran around with the wrong crowds, things like that, and now he's developed this very unhealthy habit of recycling bad women in and out of his life. And good God, do I wish I could understand that. Because I've asked him on multiple occasions. I'm like, dude, she literally stabbed you with a pair of scissors. Why are you at her house right now? Because I want to know what his brain is doing. Now, I mean, he did some drugs back in the day, so maybe it fried it. I don't know. I mean, maybe his brain isn't completely working. But I want to know what goes on in his mind when he's like, I'm going back. So I get where you're coming from. I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm curious as well in a lot of aspects. When I see somebody doing, it's particularly when I see somebody doing something relatively stupid, that's when I'm like, okay, let me see what's going on here.
That is probably the thing that people pick up on, because someone who is willing to ask the question, I wonder what made that person decide that they had to act this way. That is probably the greatest sense of empathy that you can exhibit. And empathy is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to other people, because that is what breeds compassion. When someone believes that you are really trying to understand them, not wanting to just sit there with the emotions with them, because sympathy does nothing. Sympathy is a useless action.
It's in
But
between the dictionary and what is it? Shit and syphilis, I think.
oh, that's good. I have to remember that one. But when you are truly empathetic with someone, you are seeking to understand the reasons why they got to where they were. And when they understand that, that's when they lower their guard. And you have this natural sense that you want to understand someone. And that above anything else is going to make connections effortless.
And it does. It really has my whole life. I mean, that's what I mean. Anybody that comes around, and but there's a downfall to that. Let me just address everybody that we're speaking to right now. There's a downfall to that, because not only are you connecting with people that are good for you, but you're connecting with people that should not at all be in your life.
And this is why healthy boundaries are one of the hardest things for men. Because at some point, when men become very good at empathy, it becomes a bit of a drug. You want to empathize with everyone because it creates connection, and human beings are wired for connection.
Yep. And
Connect.
it doesn't matter if you're male to male, female to female. It doesn't
Nope.
matter.
Connection is connection.
Yep.
Connection is connection. And it's through the connection that we actually experience the most emotional healing, which is why we want it so badly.
And I'm sure it creates an insane amount of dopamine.
Absolutely, yeah. That serotonin, the oxytocin, even though men don't have a lot of it, what they do have, it becomes something that they utilize very well. So when men are presented with someone who may not be the best for them, if they have utilized or they've relied on empathy as their core driver, yes, they're going to have a hard time saying no, because no means rejection. And from a young age, human beings have been hardwired to believe that rejection is the same as death. And this is something that goes way back into as ancient civilizations. For the last 250,000 years of recorded human civilization, this has been true.
Well,
So,
rejection back then, though, meant you got kicked out of the village and had to live on a rock.
yes, and that meant you most likely died, because human beings on their own are soft and squishy. And things that are not soft and squishy can defeat soft and squishy things. So,
Yep.
when we get presented with someone who is not going to be the best for us, we still have that idea of, oh, I can have a connection with this person. It may not be a good connection, but it's still a connection. And we forget that there's 8 billion people in the world. And our ability to connect, to limit the connection with one person really doesn't mean anything in today's day and age. Once you develop the healthy boundaries that help you become a really strong leader and a confident man, this is when even the people who would be less than savory begin to select themselves out, because they see that there's a wall there. And then they see that you are willing to defend that wall. It's like, nope, I don't want that smoke. I'm out.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
natural selection. I mean,
exactly, they select they qualify themselves out of your existence. And the ones that are meant to be there qualify themselves very readily, mind you, into your sphere, because they realize that you are someone that can be trusted. Because someone with healthy boundaries means that they also have strong values. And a person with strong values is someone that's always been trusted.
Well, and not only that, but I would rather surround myself with people with good values, because then what I don't know can be taught
Yes.
by those people. I mean, especially like I've always had this weird like relationship with older people, like older people, like getting ready to die in about 10-year people, you know what I mean? Like old people. And then younger people. And I think what that is I've learned so much from the older group that I trickle it down to the younger group and pass that, and it makes it in my mind, it processes as I'm passing that knowledge. So like my little siblings, you know, and then all of their friends and their friends' friends and all those kids that have come around my whole life. The seasoning that I did have over them, I felt like that was being transferred, and like some of them it worked and some of them it didn't, you know. But I've always had that weird, like I got one end or the other with the spectrum of like friends, you know. it's just how it's always worked. It's just been weird. It's always either been older than me or younger than me. I've never really had too many friends that were my age.
I've had similar experiences. I've begun really, and when I say I've begun, probably in the past, I'd say 2 years since I've really started with coaching men, so 2 to 3 years. I've been able to connect and relate better with people of my own age. A lot of them, I look at it like, nope, don't want to connect with them, because they're not someone that I consider to be someone that I would want to spend time with,
Hmm.
and that's okay. Uh, I get what I need from them. Oftentimes, I find that people that are my peers, they think they know everything, and it's like, oh, so you're still 17. Got it. You're a 45-year-old man who acts like you're 17. Okay, cool. Cool. Got it. And so then I just select myself out of that circle. And then
Hmm.
I find someone who I'm going to select myself that I can actually align with. And I'm perfectly fine with doing that. I've been doing that since I was 18 years old.
Yep. Well, and that's so I'm originally from Illinois, and I moved down here with my fiance when we had our kid, and that's a long story that we could talk about later if we want to. But yeah, anyway, so I ended up here, and she tells me all the time. She goes, "You need to go find some friends," and I'm like, "Let me just explain to you why I don't want to do that." Okay. I said I have no interest. First of all, I think I've gotten a bad rap in my own mind about how this state is because of the people that I surround myself with every day at work. That probably has a lot to do with it because it's not necessarily, I mean, you get some of the college kids that just went to a frat party, messed up, and they're on it for like 6 months. It's something like that's different, but you get to see a lot of the riffraff down here. And that, but the main point I have with that is in Illinois, I lived there my whole life, born and raised up until the point I moved down here. And I got to the point where I had my friend group weeded to about three or four, and the rest of them were acquaintances. And that, if I saw them, I'd be like, "Hey, how you been?" Hug them, go about my night. And I don't want to have to go through that process again. Because if I start surrounding myself with more and more people, then I have to weed out the ones that I don't want involved, and then solidify and then put more work in. Not that I have a problem with putting work in with people that I do want around me, but then I have to put in twice the amount of work to keep the ones that I do want. And then, so I told her, I said, listen, my friends, if I ever get any down here, will come naturally. And to be honest with you, I have more interest in making sure this family is okay and being with this family as often as I possibly can than I have in spending my time at the bar or going out to, dinner with friends or whatever. It's just, the older I get, the less and less I want to do those things.
I have to tell you that mandatory fun, which is a term that I gained from the army, mandatory fun is the least fun activity of mine. I'm very good at interacting with people, but making friends like yourself, I'm very selective who I call a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to meet what I call the sniff test. They have to be someone that I believe that I can confide in at least most of the time. And I have developed my values and my boundaries to the degree that if I see something that I don't agree with, it's like, oh, okay, I see exactly the kind of person that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to be caught up in that drama. I'm very drama allergic.
Yo, oh, good. I'm gonna tell you right now, I have zero solid friends that are females. I'm talking about like would call at 3 a.m. kind of females. And let's just be honest, they're naturally better at gossip and drama. Period. And I don't. I'm not at all that way. If you call me and say, "Did you hear what somebody did?" and I was like, "Nope," and I don't want to.
Yep.
I'm just like, well, how are you?
Facts.
Then I turn it into, how are you? You know what I mean?
Right.
I want to know how you're doing. I don't care how
Right.
Susie down the road's doing.
You want to create the connection. You don't want to just gossip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mindless talk is mindless.
exactly. I mean, I've met this person twice, and I don't know anything about them, so why would I want to know their dirty laundry? First of all, that's none of my business. Second of all, I have no interest. So, and by the way, you said you served. I really, really do appreciate that. very much so.
Yeah, I spent 10 years in the Army National Guard, so yeah,
Oh, very nice. My brother's actually National Guard Reserves in Illinois. He's been
nice.
in 3 or 4. Yeah, because he'll be 22, 20. Oh, yeah, it'll be almost 5 years this year, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going for the full 20 or not. I have no idea.
Yeah, I did my 10 and I made the choice that either I do my next 10 or I give it up. It was at the point where I was like, I'm over this. So
Yeah.
I just I made the rank of first lieutenant. I went the commissioned
Mm.
officer route, and then after I deployed, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The army life is not for me.
Yeah.
So I I just kind of like positioned myself where I would be told by Uncle Sam, we don't need you anymore. I'm like, Roger that. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
went that route. But yeah, there are people who, and I don't consider myself to have been a very good soldier. It was not definitely the greatest life for me. I learned a ton,
Mm-hmm.
gained a lot of great and valuable lessons that I will never ever be able to express the gratitude for that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
But the overall environment was not for me, and I'm glad that I served my 10 and then I got out.
Yeah. Which
And then
is 10 retirement?
no, 20 is retirement.
20. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, my main question I wanted to ask was, what is the ultimate goal with doing well, you said you're coming out with another project, the Nurturing Woman, is that what you said? Yeah. Okay, so what's your ultimate goal with these books? What do you want to accomplish by getting this all out to the people?
So the three major books that I'm writing, the Leading Man, the Nurturing Woman, and Winning the Human Condition. These are designed to really show how people thrive and how society sustains, how to create what I call an ever advancing civilization. And this is why the roles of masculinity and femininity are so important. It has nothing to do with what you want or what you can achieve. Your goals don't matter. Man, woman, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to happen is a structure needs to be created, and then a foundation needs to be built within that structure to create a lasting legacy for the future.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, in my mind, if you can get, let's say my generation, I'm 30, okay, so I'm in that 90s gap, right? If you can get my generation to build that foundation and solidify it, I feel like how many generations do you think it'll take to build the rest of that house?
Two.
So our kids as kids?
Yep. Two
Okay.
generations of utilizing this effectively, repeatedly, is all it would need to really right the ship completely. And that's based on my own opinion. That's not based on any kind of research that I've done, but it's based on one the power that these books can have in helping to right the behavior. Because these books are about behavior change. These are behavior modeling books,
Yep.
and by modeling correct behavior, you change the way that people interact with themselves and with others.
Absolutely.
And the goal is to help people understand that the job of men is to, yes, establish the goal and work towards it. Women's job is to also lead, but in a very specific way.
Mm.
They lead by helping to nurture and to nurture and cultivate the young so that they can become people who are also well adjusted, emotionally well adjusted. The emotional needs of our children are the things that are so ignored,
Mm-hmm.
and they become the things that cause the most problems. When a child's emotional needs are ignored, they're the ones that go to jail. They're the ones that commit the crimes. They're the ones that commit suicide. They're the ones that have all the problems that we see in our societies.
So let's throw this point in there with that topic you just brought up. Okay, so the kids going to jail and having hard lives and things like that after they've got off mom's teat. Okay, I read a statistic the other day, and it says that kids in single dad homes versus kids in single mother homes, there's about a 90 to 92%, I think is what I read, increased chance that that kid will be a problem child for the rest of his life growing up in a single mother home.
What they don't tell you is that when you have a single father home, you are more disciplined, but you are less emotionally available.
Hmm. Well,
So,
that's the man is. I mean, it's just always natural to. I mean, it's been instilled in us since again since we were young. Men do not show emotion. We base our actions and deeds on logic.
I'm going to rephrase that for you. Men do not prioritize emotion.
Okay, there you go. That's better.
So and they don't prioritize emotion because they're not supposed to. That is what feminine leadership is for, what receptive leadership is for.
Mm,
You cultivate the emotional needs, but you have to have the structure there so that the emotions are cultivated in the right way.
hmm.
You have the masculine leadership, which creates the understanding of this is what we need to create. And then the feminine leadership comes in, the receptive leadership saying, great, I am going to build a foundation within these walls that are going to create the life necessary long term, that are going to create the structures of success.
So what you're telling me is, and then this is another. Listen. I worked a lot of construction in my life, so this is going to be a lot of my analogies. Okay.
Sure, absolutely, yeah,
So you're telling me, and this is the way I'm processing it. The man is the bag of concrete, and the woman is the hose.
exactly, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And
Yep.
you can't create a foundation without water. You can be the concrete all you want, but you're just powder until you put water on it.
And without the powder, you drown.
Hmm. There you go. Hey, if you want to put it into again, I don't know what my audience is, but if I had to guess, if we're talking about things like this, it's going to be the construction workers and the guys building skyscrapers and the ones out breaking their backs every day. So I mean, if you want an analogy that perfectly explains how a relationship should be and a foundation should be, that would be how I interpret it. The man is the concrete and the woman is the water.
Absolutely, and that actually that encapsulates it beautifully in a very simplistic way. But yeah, it basically it shows that you need both aspects in order to create something stable.
Hmm.
And without one of them, something suffers. Something has to give.
Hmm.
And honestly, I'd much rather have a society that has both than having to choose between one or the other. Because when you choose between one or the other, something is missing.
Hmm.
You lack something. You are missing out on a key ingredient that creates the ability to thrive well. Yeah, you can survive okay raised by a father because they know how to create the structure. They know how to get things done. They know how to prioritize long-term planning. But within every long-term plan, you still need short-term goals. You still need short-term wins. You
Hmm.
need the ability to connect with other people. You need the ability to really celebrate life.
Yep.
And that's what both sides give you.
Yeah, because I don't care what man you are, whether you're a gay man, a straight man, whatever. In your brain somewhere, it's telling you that you need young to continue your I mean to have that connection with life and then continue your lineage that in somewhere instilled in your mind, it is telling you just naturally from natural born things, you need to create young. I don't know. It's at least that's the way it is with me. So
100%. Yep.
it's just
I
I've
call it part of the
always.
biological imperative, or it's the three pillars of humanity, which are procreation, community, and moral worth. Without procreation, nothing. It's a non-starter.
Hmm.
But after procreation, you have to build community, and community requires both emotional intelligence and the ability to set goals, and then have that monitored by moral worth, the desire to do good. If any one of those things is missing, it crumbles.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, society as we know it is definitely missing the moral aspect of things. Let's
And it
talk about
shows.
that.
It
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shows.
Oh my good God. Yes, it definitely does. I so let me ask you this, since we're talking about the um, single mother, single father homes. Okay, if you if you found yourself in a position where you had to pick one, which one? I mean, if it came down to gun to your head, had to pick one, which kid would you choose, or what would you choose to put your kid through?
Single father.
Yeah, I mean, because like you said, they can at least survive without, and they have some sort of moral basis, so they don't end up in trouble, and then they can also build their life, even if it's alone. I mean, that's a sad way to live, but at least, a bachelor life is better than a jailhouse life.
Well, here's also the thing. You can only blame your parents for so long before you have to take responsibility for your own healing. Once you become an adult, yeah, you're given a certain foundation, but now you're responsible for moving forward.
Hmm.
And it's up to you to decide what you're going to do with what is left. And how are you going to pick up the pieces? And how are you going to the best of your ability, flush things out so you become more well adjusted than not in order to really succeed in life? Because just surviving is no way to live.
Hmm.
And we have the capacity to create the opportunities for thriving very well. There are more opportunities now than in any other time in society, in history.
Yep.
So being able to take the opportunities for emotional healing and use them, cultivate them, and then apply them into your life so that you can not only really celebrate yourself, but you can connect with other people in a very natural and very productive way, is the best way for you to really show that you hold yourself in high regard.
Mm. Wow. It's kind of crazy. Like, I've never thought about it in such technical terms, like the way you're putting it. You're being very, I would say, educational about things. You're using proper words. You're doing all these things, and I go straight to construction analogies. But I mean, our points are the same, and I think I've built a lot of that logistics with language through the people that I've surrounded myself with my whole life, and it made more sense to them to explain it that way than it did, explaining it in the logistics by the book way, that's actually, I've talked to a few of my friends and some family, and they've told me that that's why they don't have any interest in going to talk to a therapist, is because they don't want to hear by the book stuff. They want to be able, and they said point blank period, I'd rather sit down and talk to you because you and I can have a real life conversation, not talk out of a book, you know. So, and I'm the same way. I mean, my mom, so when I was young, I was 14, 15 years old. I was a freshman in high school, and I went to this high school that you had preppy. If you didn't have money, you didn't fit in kind of
Uh,
school.
yep.
Yeah, and we didn't have money. So bullying, which makes me sound like a priss, but bullying was like a serious thing. I mean, it started when I got on the bus, and it didn't stop till I got off the bus. And it was through class, it was through everything, so I put myself in a situation where I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was living with my 80 something year old great grandmother, and I couldn't talk to her because she'd think I'm a psycho, and she'd put me in the mental hospital. So it got to the point where the only time I saw my parents was on the weekends, right? So I got lonely, and it was not only was I didn't have anybody at school, I didn't have anybody on the bus, I didn't have anybody at home, so I felt like I was alone, and it got me to the point where I actually found out what the end of a rope feels like when I was young. And my mom found out about it, and she didn't know, I don't think she knows, or she didn't know at the time that I had actually done it, but I had mentioned that my great grandmother's rafters in her barn were a good place. And she heard that, and instantly, as soon as she heard that, she was like, "We're going to therapy. You're talking to somebody." That was her first reaction. So I was like, you know what? I don't care. I just want to go and spend time with my mother, and if that's how I have to do it, then that's how I'll do it. Until I got there. And the clerk at the front, my mother asked how much the session was going to be, and she said, like, I think it was like 225 or something like that. This was back, 15 years ago. And the first, as soon as she said that, my mind immediately went to, we're doing this session, period. And that's all we're doing. I don't care what my mom says. And she cried the whole time. I mean, it's her kid. Expect it. But we went back to the house. And I looked right at her and I was like, I want you to understand that we're not going to any more sessions. And she just kind of gave me a look like, really? Why? And I said, because you know everything there is to know about me. You've raised me from zero. You know everything there is to know. It's going to take us 3 months to get to that point with this person. And then when we do get there, they're going to tell me about all these mental issues that I have. And I don't want that. I want to talk to somebody and get everything off my chest that's been on my chest. That's what I want. I don't want to talk to some random person that's going to write stuff in a notepad. I want to talk to you. So we sat on that couch for, I don't know, in the car ride. And then when we got home, sat on the couch for 3-4 hours. I mean, it was a long time, and we cried with each other and got through it. And then, and then that was it. And then we just, this is what changed my life right here. When I got done talking with my mother, she immediately went and talked to my stepfather, who, by the way, is the best thing that ever happened to me. Point blank, period. Okay? But she went and talked to him, and she said, we've got to get him out of here. And within a month, they were moved out of town, and I was in a different school. That man is everything to me. Absolutely everything. And what I hate is when he gets drunk, when we go to the bar, when I go up and visit, that's when he opens up. That's when his whole mind comes open like it's a spring chicken. It's just everywhere, man. And I'm telling you, and then he had the audacity to look at me one time, and he goes, I feel like I've failed you. I feel like I never did anything for you. I treat your your half siblings better than I treat you. And he just broke open and was just telling me about how he thought he was the worst dad in the world to me. And I said, Brian, there ain't nothing you're ever going to do that's going to ruin what you did for me when I was 16. Not one thing will you ever do that's going to be bad enough to break that. Because you literally saved me from being at the end of a rope. But see, that saying things like that to the people I care about did more for me than going and talking to somebody in an office. And that's what I wish I could talk to some of these people that are going through things like this and just go out to these kids. And I know damn well that these kids in these high schools are being treated like crap. And it's been like that for hundreds of years. Well, not hundreds. I guess they didn't have high schools back then. But you know what I'm getting at. Ever since all that started, there's been bullies. And that's something I would like to achieve at some point in my life, is to go around these high schools. And it could just be local or a couple of state borders or, something. And just talk to these high school kids and make them realize that, like, look, dude, this part in your life, get through it, and I promise you it gets better. Because you can move past it. This is only a 4-year temporary thing.
It's so interesting. I hear a lot of people say that they want to really talk to the victims of the bullying. And I see why, because you can see what is going on. You see the results. You and I have very similar pasts.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to relate to the people who have been victimized by the bullies.
Mm-hmm.
I take a slightly different approach. I want to work with the bullies themselves.
Mm.
And the reason why is because hurt people hurt people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know 100%.
And the only reason why these kids have resorted to bullying is because it's the only way they know to deal with the emotional distress they're under.
Yeah. And it's probably, 9 times out of 10 single parent homes, if we want to revert back to that.
Or it's homes that feel either like a single parent or like no parent, because there could be emotional, physical abuse. Emotional abandonment is the number one traumatic experience that anyone can ever feel. It is the most dire circumstance that any child can endure. And the sad part is that it hardly registers in behavioral or psychopathological, easy for me to say, diagnoses, because until recently, trauma was only seen as something that was either battlefield or a sexual assault.
Physical trauma of some sort.
Physical or emotional trauma was never really considered to be something that severe. Emotional trauma is what you experience after the physical experience.
Yeah,
but what if there's no physical experience? What if it's just the emotional abandonment that you are feeling?
Mm-hmm.
those scars don't heal very easily.
Yeah, because that was the thing. The bullies that picked on me were never a. It was, I mean, every now and then you get like shoved in the hallway or something, but it was never really a physical bullying. It was attacking, you don't have any money, you have crappy clothes, you have a shitty car, whatever. It was always that. It was never, so it was always breaking me down in my head like, man, these people really, I'm not good enough for anybody here, so why am I, well, and I will tell you some of my issues with the attempted suicide. That was stems from a very rough ideology of a father figure when I was younger. My biological father he chose drugs and alcohol over me. And so now I know how to process that. Now I realize that there was nothing wrong with me, per se. He wanted to live his life one way, and that didn't qualify him to be a dad. So that's what he did. And I was his first child. He's got like 2 or 3 more now, I think. One or not two more, I think, now. But I don't know. I don't really keep too many tabs on him and I don't talk much. But for the longest time, my mind processed that as I'm not good enough for anybody because I'm not good enough for my dad. And that was, then when I got to that school and all these, because I went to that same school program all the way from kindergarten and up. But then once you get into high school, it all switches to cliques, and then you're not good enough, or you don't have this, or you don't have that, and then it changes once you get into 9th grade. That's just the way it works. And so when that started, that just piled on to the already I'm not good enough and made it 10 times worse. Because now not only did my dad not want me, but nobody else does either. And then I only got to, I had to live with my grandmother strictly because of an address situation, but I didn't know how to process that either back then. Like I felt like it was an abandonment thing from my family, immediate family. And that's how my emotions processed that. So you pile all that together in a 15.
It's a powder keg that's waiting to blow.
Yeah, and it's a 15-year-old's brain that if I could go back now and talk to my 15-year-old self, the first thing I'd do is smack myself in the freaking face. Number one act would be like, wake up, realize that this is stupid, and you're good, dude. You'll have a beautiful son and a beautiful fiance and a home, and it all processes through the wash. You're good, man. Just chill out. None of this matters. But
and there's a video that I saw recently that talks about the difference between resilience and being resilient, and how one is seen as being a positive trait, resilience, but the act of being resilient doesn't feel positive in the moment at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because being resilient means keeping it together while you are processing through the unknown. And the unknown is the most scary experience because you have no control over anything.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, in my book, I talk about how every person only has control over 5 things. I call them the 5 controllables, which are your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, your decisions, your actions. That's it. Everything else is outside of your control. And a lot of people try to control those uncontrollables, which they have no business.
Let's just make the point real quick, and this is for everybody watching. That means you can't control how other people act, have opinions, or anything of that sort, just so everybody's aware.
This is true. Yeah, those fall under the uncontrollables, things you have no control over. But because we have so much uncertainty in our lives, and we forget often, or we aren't reminded that there are these 5 things that we can control, we go through life like a damn chicken with our heads cut off, thinking the sky's falling, when really it's just a moment in time. It is a blip. And then you fast forward 15, 20 years later, it's like, I was wrapped on the axle for that?
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, that's how it is now. Like, I look back to my 15-year-old self, and again, first act would be slapping myself in the face. Wake up, man. Like, this is stupid, and now that's exactly how I think. But I had to get past it.
And that is the act of understanding that you are resilient because you've come through the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But going through it is not, it's uncomfortable as hell. It is the most uncomfortable thing because you have no idea whether you are on course, you're drifting way out into the weeds, or what is going to happen next. You have to have faith that you're going to make it to the other side.
Yep.
And that means trusting the fact that you aren't supposed to have control over the things you can't have control over.
Mhm.
You're supposed to exercise that internal locus of control, the ability to control those 5 things and let go of most of the things you can't control. And when you are beset by things you can't control, rely on those things that you can in order to take you through to the other side.
So are you transferring those 5 controllables to your new, or 2 new books that you're writing as well? Because
Well,
that is,
the nurturing woman is going to be a mirror of the leading man. It's going to have a lot of the same principles, but talk about receptive leadership versus expressive leadership.
okay.
So it's going to basically follow the same exact principle. Winning the human condition is going to already have these controllables in the first 2 books. So it's really going to talk about how we win as people, the things that we need to do. Think of it as it's a great book for parents,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great book for people who feel like they are unmoored, who feel like they're just kind of lost in the sauce, and then understanding what they can do to really regain their own mooring or regain their path so they move forward, not just for them, but working with other people. And then I have other books that are planned as well. I have like 15 books total that I have planned.
Okay. Oh, we may have to keep in touch then.
I think we should.
Yeah,
I absolutely think we
absolutely.
should.
Absolutely. So, you brought up earlier that you want to talk to the bullies when you go speak to these kids.
Yes. Yep.
Tell me that's not a dream team. Tell me it's not. You and I both go.
Oh, absolutely.
And we do exactly what we're doing right now.
Yep.
We bring up a topic, you say one side of it, I'll say the other side of it, and then maybe, just maybe, if you don't have a bunch of ignorant, stuck up kids that don't want to listen, both sides can see the other person's side. Because when you're 15, you're getting bullied. You don't look at what happens at their house. You don't care because what's happening at school is all you get to see. So that's all you care about. But if you can make them realize, like, hey, they're doing this to you because most likely that's what they're receiving at home. Or they may not be receiving anything. So this is what they decided they wanted to do. I'm going to be the cool kid at school because I'm nothing at home.
And you see, this is one of the reasons why I want to deal with the bullies, because once you bring awareness to this, you instill the magic of self-awareness, where they begin to see the patterns they are being beset by, and then they understand what they are giving out. And say, well, I don't want to be that person. Nobody wants to see themselves as the bad guy. Everyone goes through life believing they are the best version of themselves that they could possibly be.
Well, and sometimes... go ahead, sorry.
When you show that mirror and you say, these are the receipts, this is what you have been getting, this is not up for debate, this is actual fact, this is what you have been getting, this is what you have been learning, and because this is what you have been learning, this is what you have been doing. Again, you cannot dispute this. These are facts. You cause a person to have to see that they may not be the hero in their life story they thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to make them say, well, shit, I don't want to be that kind of person. I need to do better.
Yep. Well, and then sometimes if you really break it down, there are certain situations where it's just black and white that their dad was a bully when he was in school and he never let it go. So now that's how he teaches his kid to be. I mean, sometimes it's that black and white.
It can be, not usually, but
Yeah.
there's always a reason behind it. Usually the long line of bullying has to do with insecurity. That is the number one thing that I found that drives aggressive or defensive behavior is insecurity or fear. And when you can get to the root of that, when you can expose that for what it is, that is when you can begin to create constructive conversations.
Yep. Yeah. And see, that's where you would have to reiterate, especially to younger crowds, that you don't want to sit them in a cubicle and talk about their problems. You want to have regular conversations like you and I are doing. I'm sure you've learned a lot about me tonight and that you haven't even voiced, just from our conversations. So you just want to have a conversation with the person, a regular, everyday conversation, and you can tell a lot about somebody just from like body language, mannerisms. I always say mannerisms. It's not right at all. Mannerisms, body language and everything. It tells a lot about a person. The way they articulate their words, the way they, eye contact. It's a lot of it. So this is a different situation because making eye contact with you looks like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's. I promise you, I'm making eye contact, and that's the way I am. And I almost think reverting back to people have this weird inclining to just open up to me. I think a lot of that has to do with like I present myself open. I don't ever really sit arms crossed, things like that, and I make eye contact. I don't belittle, and they weren't expecting. So my thought process at work is they already going through enough because they've got something wrong with their license or whatever is going on. They have to deal with the DMV, and they don't need to come into my workplace and have to deal with some asshole that's behind the desk. I want to try to make this process as friendly and as easy on you as humanly possible. And that's just how I always. I mean, that carries over into pretty much anything. I mean, building new friendships, working on a job site or wherever. I try to make things as easy as possible while still completing the goal that we need to complete. And I feel like some of that can trickle into the whole bullying thing too. Like, again, I don't want to sit you in a cubicle. I want to find out who you are and then route back to the easiest possible way to get you I hate using the word fixed because people don't like the term I'm going to fix you. That never that right. To me at least that never rolls off the tongue with you have good intentions. So
well, yeah, you can't fix anybody because no one's broken.
Yeah.
But what you can do is I love the idea of having both sides working in tandem. And the reason why is because when you work with a bully who you can see you're getting negative behavior, and so you're giving negative behavior. And then you're working with the bullied where it's like you've turned yourself into a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you can, each person can see the other for who they really are. A bully becomes a mentor. Mm-hmm. And the bullied becomes someone who can aspire to greatness. Yeah. And by doing that, you really create that shifting of roles where now they see each other for how they can both develop. There's something that they can both give. The bully can probably do a lot more with empathy, which is something that someone who's bullied has in spades. Mm-hmm. Whereas the person who bullies has more of that edge about them where they go out and they take the risks, where the person who's bullied can do more to learn how to do that more. Mm-hmm. And just really celebrate the fact that they're supposed to take risks. And when they do that and they get a result that's great, that it's okay to fail, that you can do things and you can get it wrong, and that's fantastic because you learn from that.
No matter what anybody says. Yeah, which that's a good point. That's a very solid point. And I really think we had, we might have something going here.
Yeah, we might.
I mean, I've never once sat down at an assembly in school and been talked to from both sides of things. They always came in with dare and they talked about don't do drugs. They never really had anybody in there that did them, and they never really talked about the people who it affects. They don't talk about that really. I mean, they talk about what it could do to your life and the people around you, how their emotions are going to be or whatever, you know what I mean? But they don't talk about what actually happens behind the scenes of that. And I mean, when you're doing drugs, that doesn't really matter anyway. You don't care at that point, but it's the same thing with bullying, I think. If you had both sides of the story and we could figure out some kind of way to incorporate literal mirrors into our show, like the way, so for instance, amputees, and they feel phantom pains and they put the mirror in between their legs and it makes the pain go away. It makes them, almost like trick their mind into thinking it's there. And you could do the same thing. I mean, I've always said you can tell a lot about a person from their eyes. Their eyes tell a story. And it's because that's the window to it's cliche, but it's the window to the soul, and it really is. I mean, you can really tell that somebody is unhappy with either themselves or what's going on around them right here. And that's all you need. That's all you need. So I feel like if you could figure out a way to get them to face each other, but see that would require knowing who's doing the bullying and who's the bullied. You know.
That's easy to figure out.
Well,
I find that when for me, sorry, let me qualify. For me, it's easy to figure out because I've trained myself to really look at the verbal and nonverbal cues that people give off when they are experiencing certain behavior. So I can say, oh, okay, this person is more aggressive. They're the ones who are more likely to bully. This person is more passive. They're more likely the ones to be bullied. And so I can tell that. I think it takes someone who is trained in that way to be able to spot that and then be able to work with that in the way that's going to be most beneficial.
So have you ever seen some of Charlie Kirk's like college debate or not
Oh,
debate,
of
but
course.
yeah.
Love those
Okay.
things.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So what do you think or how do you think it would go if we like at the end of our what would you call it? Speech? Yeah. Sure. We set up a booth and they literally just line up and come up to a mic or come up to us, the booth, whatever, and talk and just talk about anything they want to talk about. You know, if they leave a gap where nobody can hear what they're saying and just have them line up and one at a time come up and talk. And that I mean, it probably would be less chaotic than passing a mic around the crowd, you know, and then you could get your vocal cues, your verbal cues.
So I think that I saw Bowling for Columbine, and for the most part, I thought that it was okay done. It was done pretty well. It had a definitely an agenda
Hmm.
to the piece. But the one thing that I thought they did really well was when I forget the producer's name, but he sat down with Marilyn Manson
Mm.
and
Yeah.
he asked Marilyn Manson, "What would you say to these kids who were about to uh, um, do the Columbine shooting?"
Hmm.
And what he said is, "I would say nothing. I would listen."
Hmm.
And I think that that's actually what I would do is if someone were to come up and just start talking, the one thing that I would be doing is asking a bunch of questions. And
Hmm.
I would ask questions that would force revealing information.
Yep.
And so now these people who are either victims or bullies would have to really hear themselves speak,
Hmm.
hear what they're saying, so that it has to register. I'm not saying anything. They're the ones that are giving all the information.
Yeah, you're not teaching at that moment. You're learning.
Exactly, exactly. I would just be asking questions, question after question after question, because I'd want to know as much about them as possible. I don't want to presume that I know what's going on with them. I want them to tell me what is going on with them because
Hmm.
they know way better than I do.
Well, and you could ask questions that pry it out without actually, because if they feel pressured to say exactly what's happening, they're not going to say it. So you have to beat around the bush with the questions and get the answers you want in a sneaky kind of way.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't. I mean, I don't care who you are. You try talking to a 15, 16, 17-year-old, they're not. If they feel cornered, they're going to shut off.
exactly. Well, any human being is going to do that. I don't care how old or young you are. If they
That's.
feel like they're being cornered, that they're being observed,
Hmm.
they're much less likely, especially observed by someone they don't trust, observed by something they don't know what the end result is or why they're being observed.
That's
Where
why.
there's
That's a good point to say.
yeah,
That's why I think setting that booth up after would be way better than doing it before and then having our, or in the middle of or whatever, and then doing the speech because it's talking about things like we're doing right now would be almost like a building of trust kind of with these
it
kids.
absolutely is.
Yeah, because you could see that like, okay, this guy and this guy have two opposite goals that ultimately merge into the same goal. We want to eliminate this, but we also want both sides to understand each other. And that to me, again, I've never seen that. So if you came into my high school, me and you came into a high school, and I was a kid in the crowd, and you guys started going back and forth about, I said something about, say bullies or the kids that are being bullied. I've felt you. I've been there. I've done this, and you were like, hold on, wait a second, and you cut me off as like a dramatic thing and was saying, have you ever thought about what happens on the other side of things? Like, why do they do this in the first place? And then all these kids would like, oh, wait a minute. Their jaws would hit the ground and their eyes would wide open because they'd be like,
Exactly.
yeah, they'd be like, hold up. Why is he trying to defend the bullies? And then they'd really listen because they'd be like, there's no defense for that. And then once you start getting into why there is a defense for that, then that I feel like would build a lot of trust. And then that booth at the end, more people would feel inclined to come talk.
Because both sides feel like that they're being treated as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being given the four things that every person needs. They need to be recognized, understood, respected, and valued. And as soon as a person feels those four things, they're much more likely to open up and give trust. There's this one author and researcher. Her name is Brene Brown. And she wrote many, many books. One of my favorites from hers is Dare to Lead. And in that, she talks about how trust is the last thing that we're willing to show others, but the first thing we look for from others.
Which makes
And so
absolutely zero sense.
it
Well, I
makes-
mean, you can't apply it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's basically saying, I will show, once you convince me to trust you, I will show you trust. But if both sides are doing that, it becomes a stalemate.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is done. There is no trust to be had.
Yep.
The moment that one side says, screw it, I'm going to be the first to take the risk and offer the olive branch, offer the hand across the table and say, I want to connect genuinely. That is when you see that people begin to, they fall over themselves, wanting to also show that display of trust.
Yep. Which then that is exactly why I think the opposite sides doing the same exact speech at the same time to all the kids would, I mean, it would blow their minds. They would have no idea what to do. No idea whatsoever. And I think that could be applied to a lot of other situations. Like you just said, the trust thing. That also includes building a new relationship with somebody. Like either friendship or an actual family setting or anything like that. I mean, it's the same thing. Because you can't, and that is exactly right. You can't expect somebody to give you their trust and then you tell yourself they have to earn mine because they're thinking the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Because I don't care what anybody says, trust is earned. And if you ever lose it, it's the hardest thing ever to get back.
Trust is earned, yes, but first trust has to be demonstrated.
Okay.
And when trust is demonstrated, it becomes the easiest thing to build.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's withheld or once it's taken away, that is the easiest way to destroy a relationship. So everything begins and ends with the ability to create trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I've always said, too, communication. Like, I know that sounds like a female thing to say, but I'm not talking about female communication.
General communication.
In general, yeah. I'm not specific or specifying it to like men shut down and don't talk. Like that's not what I'm specifying it to. I'm saying communication in general. Like if for example, if say I wanted to quit my job tomorrow, but I didn't have a backup plan and I just did it and did not voice that to my fiance, I don't even want to know the hell I'd come home to. I don't even want to know. But there's people out there that do crap like that. They just come home and they in their mind, they're like, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And I feel like that creates that whole separation of trust in an aspect, you know. So it can be applied to all things.
It is universal. The ability to communicate. And communication is the number one way that trust is created. The verbal and nonverbal communication that we give, because we're communicating even when we don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're communicating any time that we interact with another person. It's all communication or lack of communication. And it's the lack of communication that causes relationships to suffer.
Absolutely.
When you are communicating and you allow information to flow freely, that is when trust is most easily able to be demonstrated.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you lay anything out about that in your book?
Yes, I do. So trust is the ability to demonstrate trace behaviors: transparency, relatability, assertiveness, compassion, and empowerment. And then do that consistently. And then use that as a way of being able to build bridges between people. So the ability to build trust, navigate relationships, and then achieve goals. And those are the three things that men are best able to do. Because, like I said, everyone communicates, verbally and non-verbally. But the ability to create trust through that communication is what allows goals to be set and then conflict to be resolved. And that's how you do that. You by creating trust. But the only way you can do that is if you have a great relationship with yourself and you've aligned yourself properly with your masculine leadership.
Which is why you did the leading man and the nurturing woman prior to
winning the human condition.
Winning the human condition. So you can't. And so for anybody listening, the way I'm interpreting this is, if you're going to read his books, if you're going to read Jason's books, read the first two first. Before you even consider reading the third one, read the first two and understand them, and possibly, if you need to, adjust your life to them before you can even think to comprehend the third book and apply it. Is how I'm taking it. I mean, I'm assuming if you read through the first two books and you're like, oh, I'm good, which I'm sure is very rare.
Yeah, I mean, if people are only missing 10% of the solution, sure, the first one of the two books, as it applies to that specific person, is going to be all they need. But you're right. That's going to be like 0.1% of the population.
Yeah, especially today's society, yes.
Yeah, most likely you're gonna want to read all the books. But
in order.
Yes, you'll and I actually do have them, book 1 and books 1, 2, and 3 of Mastering the Human Condition, which is the series they fall under.
Yeah, which I think you sent that in your introduction email. That was it's very interesting, the concept of all of it, because you hear these other people. Well, I mean, Kirk, he does the same thing. He talks about masculinity and feminism and things like that in certain aspects. But Walsh, is it Matt Walsh? Is that his name? Is that who or What Is a Woman?
I think so.
Yeah, he talks a lot more about it than Kirk does. The aspect of like all the feminist actions and movements and things like that, and it's really like, if you, in my mind, if you want to feel more empowered by moving up in workplaces or getting, I mean, I'm sure there's certain situations where women get paid less than men. Maybe, I don't even know if that's a thing or not, but you also have to look at the fact that, like, if a woman goes onto a construction site and it's a very heavily manual labor intensive, and I can do twice the amount of work in the time it takes you to do your first part of your job, I mean, yeah, we may not get paid different, but I might advance faster than you will. And that's...
Men always will.
Yeah.
Men always will. Especially where the human condition is seen as forefront. And this is something that even Jordan Peterson talks about.
Yes.
Ages between 21 and 35 are the ages in which most advancement happens. And it just so happens these are the prime years for child rearing, for childbirth.
Yeah.
So
I will tell you, having a kid teaches you some things you never thought you'd know. Let me tell you.
So there is a grace period for women. There is a biological clock that ticks, where they have a certain window of which to be able to give birth, to have children, and
or have
a healthy childbirthing window.
Yeah, because you hear these cases of like 52-year-old women that, I don't know if it's accidental or what, but they get pregnant. And it's not impossible, but it's the viability of the child and things like that comes in.
Highly unlikely. Yes, it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
And these are people love to talk about the outliers. Well, what about this? I'm like, you can't use the exception to argue the rule.
Exactly.
Because the rule applies to the majority of people. If the outliers were to disappear tomorrow and they were all to just go away, it would not have any effect on the overall growth of humanity in total. So no, outliers cannot be used as an argument to argue the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you've got two people, a man and a woman, who enter the workforce. Both men and women, both the man and the woman have a desire to raise a family. Which one is most likely going to stay in a job position while child rearing happens? The man. So he is going to have more opportunities for advancement than the woman is, because women are the are the primary educators and disseminators of culture for their children on purpose.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is, well, there's a study that I read, and my boss brings it up all the time. He goes, children will 110% be 5,000 times worse for the mother than they will for anybody else. And that's because the woman is the safety, the nurturing, all of those things. You know, and it's like your book. So I mean that's especially with boys for some reason, and I'm guilty of this. I'm a mama's boy too. I mean, it's just what it is. You know. So I mean it's a natural thing for kids to I feel like in their minds, the mom will always protect me and never take me to the point where I feel like I can't push. You know, so my boss brings it up, and I read the study. It's like almost every male child, and then females are a little bit different. You know, they tend to be daddy's girls and things like that most of the time. But boys in general are always worse for their mother than they are if they go out in public or they go to daycare or they go with their dad. I mean, my son is a perfect example. He treats her like, I mean, in my mind, I see it as he treats her like dirt, and then when he hangs out with just me, he's a little angel. I mean, he's a 180 depending on who he's with, and that's just, I mean, that's got to stem from the nurturing aspect of the woman, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot more patience that a woman has, which is why children usually last longer,
Yeah, well,
because they've got the nurturing influence of their mother, who is a very women when women are well adjusted, they are very patient, very compassionate, very just willing to create that space, that foundation, that cushion to fall on, that soft landing, if you will. They're designed to do that, and when done correctly, it is the world for everyone involved.
hmm
You encounter a woman who is willing to create that soft landing, and it's like, what do you want? Blank check right here.
and
I,
yeah,
I will give you everything, and literally, it's because of that belief that no matter what we do, we will always be accepted and loved
hmm
unconditionally.
yep.
And then with the father, it's like, yeah, he's gonna beat my ass.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You
he
you
won't he
get
won't stand for that.
you get the stop, and then you get the hey, quit it, and then you get the and then you're yeah. You probably watched that video of mine. I talk about the 1 2 3 method without saying
Yep.
1 2 3. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And that's exactly what it is. He knows because my tone is different, and that's something she really struggles with because she's got a naturally higher pitched voice. So like when she gets to like that mean voice, it still sounds kind of squeaky. So it's not really a
Yeah.
mean voice, you know. So and she
Yeah.
struggles with that. So he hasn't understood her tones yet. But it's not hard for me because I can go from just like, hey, come on now, I told you to quit, and then it's hey, stop. And you know, and that just that drop in like the baritone to it,
Oh
he
yeah. Yeah.
freaks out. I mean, normally I don't even get to the butt whoopings anymore. It's well, now I've got him trained. If he hears my footrest on my recliner go down, he's like, "Oh God."
Oh yeah, Dad's getting out. This is not gonna be a good day.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but see that's we create those walls and boundaries, and then they have them, but their walls are 2 foot high, ours are 20 foot high. They ain't getting over ours.
Yes. Which is why women create foundations and men create structures. And this is a great example as to how it works. When you've got both people working correctly, to working as a team for
Hmm.
the family, it is the most beautiful thing ever. It is the most beautiful thing to see. And it's like every human being that sees it, like, I want that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, and the sad part is I think it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. Women are so naturally independent now, and it's almost like it's instilled from them from a young age. And you know, you see these videos of these dads that are like, "I'm going to teach my daughter she don't need no man." Yeah, but then the problem with that teaching is then you're creating either childless future or a future where the man's opinion on that child does not matter because she doesn't need no man. I can raise this kid without this guy, so whatever he says about what he thinks this kid should be raised like doesn't matter to me because I don't need him and I don't need him to teach my kid things, you know. So and whether she does it openly and lets the man know that that's what her mindset is, or if she just keeps that back here and everything the man does is irrelevant, and then she just turns around and flips it when he walks away, you know, like that's probably number one thing that drives me nuts about females and males in a relationship with a child is you see the man discipline the child, and then and 5 seconds later the mom's picking it up and going, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. It's just, you know." That makes me insane. Because not only are you belittling the man, okay, so you're belittling him in the aspect of he's gonna quit. He's gonna ultimately one day just decide, screw it, I'm done. You do it, and then he's not gonna be involved at all, and then you're gonna get mad at him for that. So that cycles back to we always lose, but. But then
doing it in front of the child.
That's also it. Now you're ruining the child as well.
Yes,
because
that is the part that if it was just me, I wouldn't care. It's like, whatever, you want to belittle me all you want, that's fine.
When he goes to bed,
when it starts affecting the kids, that's when I have a serious problem.
Mm-hmm. Yet when he goes to bed, then you get to say what you want to say to me.
Exactly. Yes.
We can go outside in the barn and you can scream at me until you are blue in the face. But he's in bed first.
Yep, exactly.
He will not see it. He will not see you belittle me. He will not, because then my word in his eyes means nothing.
Exactly.
Even when he's 13, 14 years old, if I tell him, no, you're not going to your friend's house, he's going to run to the other end of the house and go, Mom, can I go to my friend's? And guess what she's going to say? Because I would rather it be this way. He already asked her. He thinks he can come to me and ask me, and I'll say yes, and I'm going to be like, what did your mom say? That's the relationship I would rather have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to go, what'd your mom say? And if he lies to me, or if I feel like he's lying to me, then I'll go to her, which is how it should be on both ends, is how it should be. But there are some situations where it's like, yeah, I don't care. And the dad just told him no 20 seconds ago. And then what does that do? You know?
So, funny story. Like I said, I'm from Massachusetts. I ended up in Canada because of a girl. And
that'll do it.
Yeah, oldest trick in the book. Oh, she got me again.
Yeah. That'll do it, bub.
But so I came into a family where she had 2 kids from her ex-husband. He has 50% of the custody, but when they are at our house, Heather and I really have set up the kind of parenting style where even though I'm not their dad, I do still have, like, you respect me in our house because I am the man of the house.
Mm-hmm. This is my house. You will listen to me.
Right. And we have set that up where I am not going to I'm not going to punish the kids. I'm not going to parent the kids, but I will be respected. And
see, that's healthy on your end too, because I've been with women with kids, and I've always said, I've always asked, is the dad involved? If the dad's not involved, then I'll pick up the dad role a little more. But if the dad is involved, I will not at all in any way belittle that and make the kids think that they have to listen to me over that, their dad, their actual father.
Yes, and I made sure they knew that I'm not their father. They have a father, and they're with him 50% of the time. For better or worse, that is not my call. That is not my judgment. My only thing is when they are at our house, I do the best that I can to guide and to demonstrate and set the example of what it means to be a good person. And honestly, it has done very well for our relationship. When I first got here, it was very rocky. Her son definitely did not want me in that house. Like, I'm the man of the house. I'm the one who's in charge.
How old is he?
And he right now he's 20. So when I got there, he was 8.
So he's got his big boy britches on.
So
but now you've been there long enough now though that you have
yes.
I got
so
you.
he and I actually created a good relationship. But again, it's because I didn't come in here saying, no, I'm the man of the house. I never made it about a battle. Mm-hmm. I made it about what is it that he needs to really feel safe around me, so that when we talk, he can let down his guard.
Hmm.
And that took some doing. It took some doing to really get to that point.
Well, especially
For
at that
him,
age. I mean, it'd be different if you came in at like 2, 3 years old. Then
right,
they adapt to that
right.
easily. But they're already 8 years old. They don't have that narrative yet, and they already have some game plan in their mind. So you had to switch that.
Exactly. So I had to really, I had to find out where the pressure points were for him to drop his guard and be willing to open up to me and create that relationship. Once I did that, it became quite easy. All I had to do was basically show some relatability and then give some wisdom, and it really made sense.
Hmm. Yep. And that's I don't know what it was about my stepfather, but I was in Florida with my great grandparents when my mother met him. And when I got home, my great grandparents obviously like, here's your kid back. But she was at his house, and the first night I met him, I mean, I walked in the door and instantly was hugging him. I got up on the couch with him, and we sat there and watched TV all night. I mean, we didn't. I don't know if we talked. I don't know what happened. I was only 5, so this is a long time ago. I can't hardly remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what happened when I was 5 years old. But it was something about him. It just, I mean, even my mom saw it. She goes, "Yeah, I got to keep this guy around." I mean, we didn't even say hi, and I just ran up and hugged him. And it was just, it's kind of like with me and the openness that people have with me. It's the same thing. Which, I mean, I'm sure you said it was a little rough when you came in. Did he resist pretty hard?
Oh yeah, yeah. He became very he created the oppositional relationship. And so the natural inclination is to meet force with force. But
Hmm.
being the fact that I've been working with behavior for so long, I knew better. And I knew that I had to first observe and then I had to apply.
Hmm.
So I had to observe what the patterns were of his behavior. What were the things that were going to get him to listen more? What were the things that were going to get him to want to open up? How is it that I could really gain his trust?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And parents, if anyone who's listening to this broadcast who is a parent, the your authority is not naturally derived. When it comes to leadership, authority is not something you take. You take responsibility.
Hmm.
You gain authority. People give authority. People take responsibility. And that is how proper leadership is done.
Wow.
So, in order for you to become an effective leader, you have to take the responsibility of knowing what it's going to take for you to get people to give you the authority necessary to be that leader.
Hmm. You don't think about it like that. You really don't. Like, as somebody who doesn't think outside the box, and I really don't. Like I've said in a couple of my other videos, I have probably 5 tracks that my mind stays on in a day. I take care of the house, take care of the bills, take care of the family, keep gas in the car, keep food in the house. Those are my 5 tracks that really, like, those are my main goals for the week. And, I don't think outside the box a lot. So when it comes to, thinking of the difference between an authority and, would you respect?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. I don't separate the two because in my mind, it's my responsibility to have authority over my child. So I put the two together. Which I'm sure they naturally they work hand in hand, but I don't look at it the way you do. I look at it as I am responsible for this authority over this child in the aspect. But see, I also have reins on that too because I believe if you're too authoritative, then that's when you create a rebel who will do worse in life than if you would just be like, okay, look, there's consequences, but we're going to get past these consequences and then you're going to learn from it, right?
And this is where this is where people really do confuse the two, because you take responsibility for creating a life and a home. There are certain responsibilities you have taken. You make sure the bills are paid, there's gas in the truck, there's food on the table, there's a house over their head, and that um, you do all, and that you protect your family.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your 5 things that you do. You have taken those as your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have taken that responsibility, your fiance has given you the authority to be the man of the home.
Mm.
So now you have a child. Your responsibility is to see to the safety and welfare of that child until they are able to make choices of their own. And then also, it is your responsibility to notice when they are beginning to sprout their own personality.
Mm-hmm.
And it is your responsibility to allow them to make certain investigations and certain experiments on their own to learn.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
Because
I was like that growing up. If I didn't make my own mistakes, I would have never learned anything. Because if I just listened to people and didn't do things on my own, I would have never learned. Because the way my brain works, somebody could warn me a million times that, hey, this is going to mess something up, or you're going to get in trouble for this, or whatever. Not at all did I take that in at all. It went in one and out the other. And then I'd do it, find out what the consequences were, and then, I had no problem being humble enough to go back and be like, yeah, no kidding.
And see, this is where authority meets responsibility, because your responsibility is their safety to help them develop into responsible human beings. But because when you do that correctly and you give someone the respect to be their own person, they are going to see that you have taken on certain responsibilities, you have not been overbearing, and now they give you the authority to then be a mentor in their life.
And what age do you think that comes about? I'm sure it's different for men or for boys and girls.
About 8 years old, between 6 and 8 years old.
So at 3, it's still my responsibility to be the authority figure.
To be the responsibility figure.
Okay.
Sorry, no. Kids learn to lie when they're 2. So at that point, that is when you have to honor their autonomy. It's called the psychological term is called mentalization and reflective functioning. And this is the ability to see oneself as their own self apart from their parents, and also be able to understand that their own actions are a reflection of their personality. And your ability to then honor that and say, yes, you are a separate person. I'm responsible for keeping you safe, but you're developing in your own unique way.
Mm-hmm.
And I will respect that. And through that respect, through the distinction between your responsibility and their autonomy, by being able to separate those two, they give you the authority to be a mentor in their life.
Yeah, you don't think about it like that. When he's this young, his mind is very impulsive. He sees it and he does it. Like, if it's a toy, or if it's jumping off the porch, or, the roof, whatever he decides he wants to do is very impulsive. So, like, I guess the way my mind processes it is I'm the protector, and that's how it should be. So I understand the difference between safe, dangerous, like doing things safely, or doing dangerous things safely. I think Peterson actually is the one that said that.
Yep.
Yeah. You need to let children do dangerous things safely. And the safety part comes from us. We have to make sure that what they're doing dangerously is safe.
Right. And safety, people have to define what safety is, because if you just call it safety, it still is very nebulous term. It becomes very vague.
Yeah, very broad.
So I define safety as, are they not bleeding out? Are they not dying? Oh, well, then it's safe.
Are you broken or bleeding? No, okay, you're fine then.
Yeah. Well, even if you break something, get a cast, it'll heal. What did we learn? Okay, great. Let's not do that again. Okay,
that's true.
That's where the mentorship really comes in. But
you gotta watch
sure that
you got to watch that breaking stuff though, because then they're going to get addicted to people thinking, or people coming around them with Sharpies. They feel like superstars. They're going to turn into Tony Hawk eventually.
And well, yes, I mean, consequences for actions are absolutely paramount. But again, that comes to your responsibility. The responsibility to teach them what are actions and consequences. That everything that you do, every action that you take, contributes to the circumstances that you experience in your life. And so being able to internalize that, say, okay, what did I learn from this? Rather than saying life is happening to me. No, life is not happening to you. Life is a result of a combination of what everyone else and you are doing at the same time, the results happening in real time.
That drives
So
me
how
nuts.
can you learn from that?
And yeah, that drives me nuts when people are like, "Oh, my life just sucks," and I'm like, "Okay, but why?" That's the first question that comes out of my mind. Why does
Yeah.
it suck?
What have you done to contribute to this?
Because 9 times out of 10, if your life sucks, it's probably got a lot to do with you.
Yes.
So,
And this is the thing, radical what's the term? Radical responsibility or radical ownership. It's a term that is in Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, who is a former Navy SEAL. He talks about the idea of extreme ownership, owning everything that you can be responsible for, and then deciding to do something about it.
Yep, that's the big step, and you can learn a lot from like drug rehabs or AA meetings and stuff. You admit you have a problem.
Yep.
First and foremost, if you don't
Absolutely.
recognize that you have an internal issue, there is no possible way to fix the problem. You cannot create a solution for a problem that you don't even know exists.
Exactly. Or as Einstein put it, we cannot solve a problem using the same thinking that got us in the problem in the first place.
Psychotic. It's literally the definition. Doing the same action over and over again and expecting different results.
There you go.
I'm just throwing that out there. If your life sucks and you just keep going on the same track you're going on, it's probably going to continue to suck. But, well,
Man,
we've been on
for
here
2 hours.
Yeah, man. That's what I was getting ready to say. We've been getting after it. I'm going to have to cut this down a little bit. Which I'm not going to cut anything serious out. I mean, that's the thing is there's not like a lot of pauses or a lot of uhs. It's kind of been pretty solid all the way through.
It really has.
And that's good because even if I've got a couple other people from that chat that have gotten a hold of me to be a guest, and I really hate I hate being judgmental, man. But like everybody that has emailed me, I've looked back at the chats and seen if I could find their profile picture or their profile in general on Facebook. And I feel like with social media and the new times that we have now, there's a lot you can learn about somebody from, like you did. You went onto my profile and looked at my stuff and you were like, yeah, I think we're going to get along. So I mean, it's the same thing. I go on to some of these people and I'm like, this is going to be an interesting podcast episode, let me tell you, because we probably have very different views on a lot of things. But yes, it makes good content, whatever. But I think those conversations actually, depending on how they go, obviously, somebody hangs the call up and is just like, okay, I'm done talking about this, I'm out. That's different. But if you have a seriously, civil and not even a debate, a conversation is the way I would put it. A conversation between the two differing opinions or differing facts or differing, lifestyles, that creates a learning opportunity for one or the other.
Both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
as long as they're willing to see it as that and not feel threatened by it.
That's what I mean. I'm sure I'll have one or two people that get on here that are like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And then nothing. And then it'd just be me sitting here, I'm sure there will be a couple of those people and those will not be aired, obviously. But I hate that. Because I don't want to debate with you. That's not what I'm on here for. I want to know why you think the way that you do. And you should want to be on here to know why I think the way I do. And that's why when I sent you the message, I was like, hey, what do you not want to talk about? I'm going to say that to everybody, because then if they give me a list of what they don't want to talk about, whether it be politics or, say they don't want to talk about feminism, that's one that I'd really love to talk about. But I mean, if somebody says they don't want to talk about something, it's because they understand that they probably have the wrong view of it, and they don't want to know what the factual, evidence is as to why they're wrong.
I love that. So what don't you want to talk about? Because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about.
Exactly. Yeah. That's almost how I feel. If somebody said I don't want to talk about politics, the first thing I'm going to ask is, how do you feel about the election? I mean, you said you live in Canada now.
Yeah.
So have you even been keeping up with any of that?
Oh yeah. I actually, I voted. I did my I gave my vote. So um and I was I was back visiting my dad back in April. So I made sure to do an absentee vote and just set that up because I wanted to make sure that I was going to have my voice heard
Yeah.
because it was that important.
Well, I mean, so how does that work? So are you on a visa? Or I mean, is that even what
No,
it's called over there?
well, there are no visas. Basically, we're in the process of doing permanent residency.
Mm.
It's kind of a long process anyway to getting
It's,
the whole forms
it,
filled out.
does
But
that work like it does coming into the United States too? Is it kind of like the same thing? You gotta go through all the court systems and all that stuff and pass tests and all those other things. Are you
not really,
considered like you're not like
not
an
for me.
immigrant over there?
Well, I mean, I'm considered an immigrant, but I mean that's only by definition. I mean, there's not much difference between the U.S. and Canada as far as culture goes.
I didn't really figure there was.
No, and especially here in Alberta. Basically Alberta is considered the Texas of Canada.
Mm.
So
So you fit right in.
I do. I really fit in for the most part, except for the people that are self-centered and selfish, which are a lot. But
Yeah.
so,
See, that's backwards. I've always heard Canada or Canadian people are like super nice.
passive aggressive.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
I gotcha.
The correct term is passive aggressive, and they're not Canada geese. They're Cobra chickens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they are nasty. But uh, seriously, being here in Canada was a very minor culture shock, except for the color of the money, which looks like Monopoly money. And I still give Heather I still razz her about that. It's plastic and it's multicolored. It's not right.
It's actually plastic.
Oh yeah, yeah. It used to be paper like U.S. currency, but then they went to like this plastically kind of stuff. It's like, okay, this is a thing. All right, but
Whatever, I guess.
yeah. Anyway, so so yeah, for the most part, it was basically all the same. Now, as far as like coming and going, it's really easy. I can come here as long as I don't overstay my welcome, go back to the U.S. and then do that every once in a while. And then
Hmm.
once we have all the documents set, doing an outboard visa, which takes about 2 to 3 months, and then boom, congratulations, you have your permanent residency.
So does that
Uh,
sacrifice your citizenship here?
No, no, because I'm not looking to be a citizen. I'm not looking to actually be a citizen of
Mm.
Canada. It's just like if someone from, let's say, Brazil were to come here and get a green card,
Mm-hmm.
is the equivalent.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. Well, that's why I asked for a visa because I figured that's. I mean, most people are on work visas, but I just didn't know if you were like just temporarily there or what.
I'm self-employed, so I never actually had to worry about applying for work because I've always done my coaching business. So it was really. It's probably I'm in that gray area that's like the easiest to just navigate because
Mm-hmm.
I don't require anything from the government. I'm not taxing the government at all. At the same time, I just really enjoy being here because my wife is here and she can't move. So and since I could, I did.
She can't come over.
Well, no, because she has family ties and she wasn't
Oh,
going to give up her kids.
so
So
yeah, it's her reason. Okay, I got
right,
you. It's not like
yeah.
the Canada's like you're not going.
Nope, no, it's nothing like that. There's nothing preventing her from moving. It's just that it was more she has roots and she didn't want to disrupt that, and I totally understand that.
I'm guessing you didn't have any over here other
Not per
than.
se. I do have a child with another woman, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah. We've already got 2 hours into this. I'm sure we could talk again sometime,
Absolutely.
but yeah, no, that's neat, man. I've never. Listen, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I've never even seen the ocean in person, so let alone being out of the country. I've looked at Canada. I've been to the Niagara Falls, and I was like, oh look, there's Canada, and it looks exactly the same as where I'm standing right now. That's cool.
Right? Yeah.
So I mean, I'd really like to come up there and do some hunting and fishing, though. That's what I'd really like to do because I heard their trout fishing, or not trout, but salmon fishing up there is insane.
Salmon fishing and then hunting for elk.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, you
yeah.
done any of that while you've been up there?
I have not actually. I haven't had the opportunity.
Mm.
The whole thing about friend circles and being able to
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that whole thing. Yeah.
Well, because I'm sure navigating the woods of Canada is probably a little different than the woods of Massachusetts. So it's not something you'd want to go out and do on your own.
Not really. No. I'm trained with land nav, and still, even then, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not I'm not that hardcore.
Yeah, well,
I'm not a survivalist.
you have landline or land nav training, but you don't have Canadian land nav training. So I mean, I'm just,
It's different, eh? We
yeah,
do it differently up here.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, I mean, there's more bears, there's more shit that can
Yes.
kill you.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Bears. There's the mountain lions. There's all kinds of things.
yeah, and I heard everything's on steroids up there too.
Well, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
massively larger than down here.
Yep.
But
And then, well, at least it's not Australia. Where in Australia,
mm,
everything tries to kill you.
mm-mm. Yeah, I'm not waking up to a spider this big on my face. I'm
And
not
that's a
taking.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'll stay right here where I just have to kill mosquitoes every 5 seconds. I'm okay with that.
There you go.
But anyway, yeah, I feel like we had a good session. You ready to wrap it up, go to bed, do all that?
Absolutely. I gotta go and do my own thing. So
Yeah.
this is great. Mind if I plug my book?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead.
Great. So if you go to relatum.com, you'll be able to go to the website that actually takes you to my book. It's available on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle or on paperback. Also on the website, you can take the personality test. You can find out what your personality archetype is as a man, and find out what your core need is, what your um, motivator is, and also how you make decisions. And if you want the full report, it's available for $27.
Hmm. Fantastic, fantastic. And I did plan on putting the Amazon link to your book in all the descriptions of all the videos. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, no problem at all. And if anybody is interested, and like I said, we'll keep in touch. You can let me know when a new one releases has been published, and give me a link to it, and I can promote that too. I'm sure. Again, we'll have another conversation at some point. I'm sure.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, everybody watching, the link to his book will be in my description, and I feel like a lot of men could benefit from this book. I mean, absolutely. It's even myself. I mean, I'm every day learning new things about myself and what needs to change, and a lot of that comes from the mouth of the fiance. But so so if I can, well, yeah, but if I can work on myself and make myself a better person, that would help her create what she wants as well. That all works hand in hand. So I feel like a lot of people could benefit from this. So I mean, by all means, go down and click the link. There is no affiliation at all. It's just affiliation between myself and Jason. That's literally all it is. And yeah, I feel like a lot of you guys could benefit from that, especially in today's society. So Jason, I feel like we had a really good session. It's very nice to meet you and talk to you, man. I learned a
Awesome.
lot of
This has been
stuff.
great. I've really appreciated our time together.
Yeah, no problem, man, for sure. And you guys be watching out. Me and Jason, I'm sure we'll collab again and we'll get back on here. And I have another lady that got a hold of me. She's a psychiatrist and does that for a living. So I feel like if we got all three of us on here at some point, that would be interesting.
That'd be cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. So you guys just be watching out for more Jason. He'll be around, and the link to his book will be in the description. And you guys have a great night.
Take care, guys.
Be safe.